My presentation is the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. They're two opposites at one time, not just in between themselves as bands, but also, as what we're going to look into, is different from actual society or the way that the world actually is. Starting off, a little bit of background with the Beatles. They represented by the music was love and peace, kind of some, I don't say tranquil, but some innocent stuff. And in representation to the old school kind of deals, they were more of a kind of, an innocent, lovey-dovey kind of deal as far as their music goes. Nothing was rough at all. Everything was more tranquil. They didn't really start up anything, but more of just innocent, but yet still kind of an upbeat deal. And just examples, I Want to Hold Your Hand. It could be like a school dance crush deal, please say to me you'll let me be your man. Maybe it's say high school prom or something like that, and this guy really likes this girl, and this is I wanna be your man, I wanna hold your hand kind of deal. Also just some lovey-dovey stuff. And then another song, All My Lovin', kind of thinking on it, just long distance relationship deal. And I was thinking about it, and from the time period of these guys grew up in the early 40s, it could also kind of mean something along the lines of World War II, say the husband went off the war and then he left the wife, but was like, don't worry, I'll be back, I'll send all my loving back to you. And just kind of a long distance deal. The Rolling Stones were, as from the videos that I've watched, they were very wild and rambunctious, especially getting more towards their later years. And some of their concerts that they had, later on, not so much early on, because early on it was just mostly, Mick Jagger's doing a lot of movement and stuff and so forth, the center of attention. But as they get, especially as they progress as a band, they start becoming a little bit more wild and a little insane. And they start moving around a lot more compared to the Beatles, who mostly stayed stationary and just, weren't really that active. They were, I'd say, non-conformist kind of group. This is one of those things where they just went along with stuff. They didn't like the world. They did their own thing. Especially in songs like Satisfaction. I can't get no satisfaction, and there's parts of the songs and the lyrics that he's talking about, the guy on the TV is telling me this, or I'm hearing this and so forth, but he can't get no satisfaction. He doesn't like what's going on, and so he's, I don't like the world, I don't like society. And then Paint It Black. Going over Paint It Black is, he wants to paint things black, but what is black? The flag for surrender is the color white. The color black, so if you raise a black flag means anarchy. So as far as Paint It Black goes, anarchy, against society, and stuff. For as far as comparing the two, as far as society goes, I think they slowly started the generation gap. Early on in the 60s, whenever they started getting bigger. We're just talking about the way their music style was. The Beatles were a lot calmer, and obviously, they didn't move around. They were pretty stationary, but they were still very energetic, and you can tell. You listen to some of their music, you watch their Ed Sullivan Show program, you can tell, they're getting into it a little bit, but they're just not kicking over the microphone and stuff like that. The Rolling Stones were wilder. They had more movement. They were a lot more active on the stage. And then just themes between the two bands. Girls in love for the Beatles, and then the world for the Rolling Stones. The Beatles, innocent love. And I think how they kind of slowly started generation gaps, they kind of like that innocence that they had. It's kind of like a cover-up deal. They listen to it, it's like mom comes in, little Susie's listening to the music, and mom's like, oh, what are you listening to? And she's like, I'm listening to the Beatles, and she's listening to it. She's like, I want to hold your hand, oh my love, blah, blah, blah. Just softer, lovey-dovey stuff. And it's like, oh, okay, that's fine. But then if she comes in and she listens to Rolling Stones, she's going to be like, what the heck is this? So, because the Rolling Stones had more of a bad boy image, you know, hated the world and so forth. So, when the Beatles use that innocence, it's kind of a cover-up deal, and it's like they start listening more, but slowly as then they progress towards their later years, and they kept listening and stuff, get songs like Twist and Shout, so that can have a couple different meanings depending on what you're thinking about. And influence, older music, which represents kind of like the previous years, you know, generation gap. You have this group growing up listening to like rock and roll, and then you have over here where you're listening to like Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, and at least Elvis Presley from the waist up, because waist down was not family appropriate. And then you had the new, just kind of new rock deals, what I'm going to call it. New rock focused on worldly influence. You gradually broke away from the older ties and older influences. So instead of getting stuff like, you know, listening to like definitely the music style of both, you know, Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby, it kind of shifted a little bit, and it's now more about girls, and you know, it's like complete focus is on them wanting that relationship. You know, you want that relationship, kind of an influence deal. And then with the Rolling Stones, it's I want to change the world, and I don't, you know, it's breaking away. I don't like your ideals. I want my own ideals. I want my own way of society. So I'm doing that. And because of those influences, they slowly started the generation gap.